Hospital port as pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV and welcome to this UFO Disclosure 2023. The hearings, 1 week on. Yeah, I'm making this video because it is literally a week since the famous hearings, just over a week actually, since the famous hearings that I discussed in the last 2 or was it 3 videos? I can't even remember how many I've done about this particular subject. Yeah, there's going to be... there'll be more, no doubt. I'm not the only one contributing to this video. I am bringing on Stephen Bassett in a minute. I've got another had another little word with him, which I recorded, which you should find interesting. And that's coming up in a second. But first of all, I want to go through a bit of information. Now what I'm going to go through is kind of what I wanted to cover during the live stream, but basically I was too tired because I did go on a bit long, didn't I? That is an absolute marathon live stream I did. So I think it's one of the longest I've ever done. So we're just going to go. I did say I would cover a couple of things, in particular the famous letter from Sean Kirkpatrick. So I'm just going to let's just find out where I've got that, because I've got like yeah, here we go. All right, this is going to be very interesting. Oh yes, I have it here. Let me just share screen with you, and we'll have a look. We'll have a little look at it. Okay, so we have, this is the little statement from Dr. Sean M. Kirkpatrick, PhD, the chairman of ARROW, the, what's it called? What does ARROW stand for? Well, you know, something research, something organization. Oh, no, okay. Don't ask me what AIMSOG stands for goodness sake. Anyway, he says here, this is hearings and transparency. This is a statement he made after the hearings last week. I'm not going to... How do I do a Sean Kirkpatrick voice? I don't know. I'm not going to try and do one. Let me begin by saying that the following are my own personal observations and opinions, which do not necessarily represent official DoD or IC positions. Yesterday, the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs held an open hearing on UAP, during which a government cover-up of extraterrestrials was alleged. Correct, yes. I'm sort of slipping into a Kirkpatrick voice now, so it's okay. I wholeheartedly applaud congressional efforts to get to the truth about what UAP are and the risks to both pilot safety and national security. Okay, right. Well, getting to the truth of what UAP are, I think the congressional, I don't know how many people in Congress or how many people in government, but some of them have more of an idea than others. Okay, let's just get out of this. Let's just get beyond this mindset, shall we? This rather stick in the mud, old-fashioned idea that well, like some of them are weather balloons and some of them are swamp gas, and this one's a seagull, and well, there's 0.1% we can't explain, and who knows what they are, right? We've got to get. We're living in the 1950s, guys. We've got to move forwards. I'm absolutely committed to the transparency on both the historical mission and the operational mission. Right, I'm glad he's committed to transparency. I don't know exactly what that means when it comes to the historical and operational mission. I don't know what the difference is. As the director of ARROW's, excuse me, a basically talented, devoted, and highly motivated team. Talented, devoted, and high. That sounds like a song, doesn't it? Talented, devoted, highly motivated. Anyway, however, I cannot let yesterday's hearings pass without sharing how insulting it was to the officers of the Department of Defense and Intelligence community who chose to join ARROW, many with not unreasonable anxieties about the career risks this would entail. I thought you said there was no cover-up and nothing to worry about, and no stigma. To satisfy their congressionally mandated mission. That's right. It was Congress was basically ordering. That's right. They see 6 months to come up with the goods, or you know what. Okay. They are truth seekers, as I am, but you certainly would not get that impression from yesterday's hearing. ARROW was established by law to investigate the allegations and assertions presented in yesterday's hearing. Allegations by its witnesses of retaliation to include physical assault and hints of murder are extraordinarily serious, I know, which is why law enforcement is a critical member of the ARROW team. Is that sounds like a person, which is why law enforcement is a critical member of the ARROW team. Is that can you call him law, or do you have to call him Mr. Enforcement? Anyway, yeah, I know what he means, and this is why well, Steve's going to come onto this, which is basically that he needs to talk to the Department of Justice. Anyway, specifically to address and take swift action should anyone come forward with such claims. Yeah. Well, that's what Steve's going to mention that because he talks about the Department of Justice, like I said. Yet, contrary to assertions made in the hearing, the central source of those allegations has refused to speak with Arrow. Right, now we're talking about David Grush. Now, funnily enough, David Grush mentioned in his interview with Ross Coulthart about his problems with Sean Kirkpatrick. According to Coulthart, he's the one who tried to he left messages for Kirkpatrick, and Kirkpatrick didn't get back to him. Do you remember Grush saying, "Oh, he's got my phone number"? Do you remember that? If Stephen Greenstreet can get David Grush's phone number, I'm quite sure Sean Kirkpatrick can. Furthermore, some information reportedly provided to Congress has not been provided to Arrow. Well, welcome to the real world, mate. Raising additional questions about the true commitment to transparency by some congressional elements. Yes, there's been, as you know, as he's probably guessed by now, what was talked about in that hearing last week is not the first time some of the people in that room will have heard that information and more. The subcommittee, whose questions and oversight duties are irreproachable and in genuine need of answers, has never asked Arrow for an update on the reporting system, the historical review, the operations, and the S&T strategy that Arrow leads and is undertaking. All right, now I get it. Now I understand the difference between what he said earlier about historical. Was it operational? What was it he said here? Something about historical mission. What was it? Historical mission and operational mission. The historical mission is investigating past instances. And if you remember very famously, it was going to be from 1947, basically the start of Project Sign, to the present day. And suddenly they somehow nudged it back 2 years to 1945 for some reason. The operational mission is contemporary cases. I get that now. Okay. A rational person watching the hearing might reasonably assume that both the witnesses and members had an understanding of the department and the IC's progress since the establishment of Arrow around this time last year, only naturally leading them to conclude that Arrow had been ineffective, non-transparent, and delinquent in its legislated mission. Not really. I don't think they mentioned Arrow very often. They certainly didn't. They certainly didn't criticize it. Even Kirsten Gillibrand was actually quite sympathetic to you, Dr. Kirkpatrick, when she grilled you a few months ago. Arrow briefs the defense and intel committees regularly, and since the last NDAA and Homeland Defense S&T and several other committees as well. Right? Yes. S&T must be is it security and training or security and tactics or something like that? Yeah. But yeah, so what's I don't see what his problem is. Not sure exactly what he's saying here, because he wasn't left. He may have been left out. He wasn't sitting on the committee, and there's a reason for that, which I'll come to. But it's he seems to think they're slagging him off or they're snubbing him or something, which I'm not. Anyway, I am deeply disappointed at the denigration of Arrow's dedicated men and women, hailing from the Department of Defense, intelligence community, and civil partners. Who sure they're civil partners or they're married? Who are pouring their hearts out working this issue on behalf of the Congress. It's denigration? What denigration? As I said, this appears to be his impression. Is it correct? Arrow has the authorities and resources necessary to execute this mission and meet congressional intent. And as we've stated before, Arrow welcomes anyone with knowledge of any of these allegations or programs to talk to us in a safe, secure, and appropriately cleared environment. Rest assured, Arrow will follow the data wherever it leads. I think I understand where he's going now. I think I understand what his problem is. Finally, to be clear, Arrow has yet to find any credible evidence to support the allegations of any reverse engineering program for non-human technology. I'm sure you haven't, Sean. I'm sure you haven't. I'm sure you haven't had any access to that evidence. There's a reason for that, and hopefully you're going to become aware of it. Also, to be clear, none of the whistleblowers from yesterday's hearing have ever worked for Arrow. Was ever representative to Arrow, contrary to statements made in the testimony and media. Yeah, well, that was discussed between David Grush and Ross Coulthard's. And so, according to them, the blame is not completely on other people. I must say, right, there's a pretty good. I'll just find it for you. I've just been watching this. I haven't actually finished it yet, but I think this is actually pretty good. This is John Greenwald of. This is John Greenwald Jr. of the Black Vault, which you may have heard. He's covering the same subject. I haven't finished watching this yet, but he's always very interesting. Is this guy? I think he's a little overcautious at times, but he's certainly not a skeptic. I mean, he may come across as a skeptic. Some people classify him as a skeptic, but I'll tell you what: as soon as evidence comes his way, he changes his mind. He changes his mind. A real skeptic would never do that. So yeah, he's doing very well, I think, and I think he's a good guy. And remember, because when the Navy footage first appeared, he questioned whether it was actually from the Navy. He said maybe it's students did it with CGI and things like that. I don't know why students get blamed for all these things, but they do. So yeah, I'm going to check that out later. I was going to watch it beforehand and report to you, but there's no time now. So that's now. What's interesting about reading this little ditty here from Sean Kirkpatrick is that it is not completely. It's not completely without precedent. In fact, there's a very, very important precedent, I think, and that basically is the exact experience J. Allen Hynek had when he was working for Project Blue Book. J. Allen Hynek, if you recall, was an astronomer. He was an astronomer at a university who took a kind of sabbatical. He was originally just going to be a few months doing something a bit different, so he decided to join Project Sign in 1947. He was recruited to run the official government UFO investigation into UFOs. And as soon as he got involved in it, before long, I mean, he worked for Project Sign and for Project Grudge, which didn't last very long. These were replaced, I think, in 1948 with Project Blue Book, or 48, 49, which then ran for 20 years, and Hynek was running it. But then Hynek learned an awful lot during that period. What he learned radicalized him. He learned that I think, rather like Sean Kirkpatrick is now learning, is that what's that? I mean, indeed, in the TV series, the brilliant TV series which I reviewed, it's been dramatized very well. Your job is to to write reports and close cases. Write reports and close cases. Write reports and close cases. That's the whole purpose of it. And indeed, Kirkpatrick is basically realizing now. I think he had the impression, indeed, this is what Hynek had the impression, that this was an actual investigation by the US government into UFOs. What he found out later on is that the real investigation and the real research and the real knowledge about UFOs is kept in an entirely different department, one of which Hynek had no access. And that Project Blue Book was simply there. It was simply a shop window version for the government to say, look, this is our official investigation. We're investigating them. 99.9% weather balloons and swamp gas. 0.1%, there could be something, So that was what was going on. And when Hynek realized it, he responded actually better than Kirkpatrick has. I hope Kirkpatrick actually will realize what's going on here, and he will respond in a slightly more mature and level way than he's doing here. Because basically what he's saying here is this is an insult to my team, and somehow during the hearing we were overlooked. We already have a whistleblower process inserted and as part of our mandate. We have a whistleblower process. People can come to talk to us in a safe, secure, and appropriately cleared environment. So why are they all going and talking to the various skiffs to various committees, and why are they bypassing us? Why is he being left out of the loop? And funny enough, viewers of Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, available at all good bookshops now. Price £10. All right, readers of this book will know that my character, my central character in that book, Clayne Quilly, experienced exactly the same thing. Because in the story, he's made head of Secretary for Extraterrestrial Affairs, And that means he thinks he's supposed to know everything that's going on. But then he realizes that he goes to try and investigate what looks like a crash retrieval, and he's immediately just called out of the room. And he's very upset like that. He's put out by that. It's rather like Admiral Wilson must have felt when he was basically treated exactly the same way. Admiral Wilson is another person like Kirkpatrick, like Hynek, who thinks they think they're in a position of authority and a knowledge and awareness, and that basically their position means something. And then they find out it doesn't. They find out that they're basically being manipulated. They're just being used. Now, funnily enough, as you'll hear in a minute, Stephen Bassett doesn't agree with me on this. He actually refutes what I said, and I didn't have really a good answer for him at the time. I may think of one. Okay, so where were we? Right. I'm just checking my notes to see what I'm going through. Okay. Stuff in downloads folder. What's that? Okay. Downloads. Okay. Nope, that's it. I think that's all I've got. Okay, right. Moving swiftly along. How have the media been? Now, I said during the live stream, I was too tired to do it, and the live stream had gone on too long. But how are the media dealing with this? Now, first thing I'm going to bring up is I did promise I'd bring this up, and I gave you the details during the live stream. This is from Fox News. Russian UFO engagements, secret Tic Tac reports, and 3 key figures slip under the radar at congressional hearing. Can I do my Fox News voice? Russian UFOs engagements, secret. No, I don't know. What's a Fox News voice? I don't know. They slip under the radar. I don't know what they mean by that. 3 key figures. They were all there. Slipped. Anyway, investigative journalists Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp provided Congress with sworn testimonies, which were obtained by Fox News Digital. Well, they were. They sent them in. They made statements, didn't they? Oh, Chris Eberhardt. Why does that name sound familiar? Chris Eberhardt. So that name sounds familiar, something in the UFO field. Anyway, it'll come to me, but I've heard that name before. And flanked former intelligence community inspector general at Wednesday's UFO hearing. Well, that is actually McCulloch. That's Grush's lawyer. First, right, okay. I think I covered this, didn't I? First on Fox, Russian warplanes engaged UFOs, chased them, and even shot at them at least 45 times by 1993. And funnily enough, I mean, I think I covered this in the live stream actually. But funnily enough, I think it's very, very strange. Do you remember my Russian Roswell video that Stephen Mumbling hated so much? That's what they talked about in that in the documentary. So why is it now it's being told? Now it's being talked about officially. Now, here we are. Both. That's just one snippet of information received in letters written by Knapp and investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell to the House Oversight Committee before Wednesday's UFO hearing. Both letters were first obtained by Fox News Digital and published in their entirety below. We were entered into the congressional record. Yeah, I was impressed by that actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to read through the entire statements, but they are covered down here anyway. As you can see here from this picture, there's Corbell, McCulloch, and George Knapp there in the front row. Quote, since 1969, the position of our military has been that UFOs pose no threat to national security and are not worthy of further study, even though they can penetrate our most secure facilities and shut down our strategic nuclear deterrent. This dismissive attitude, correct, George, is directly at odds with what was revealed in documents and reports and internal memos. I know, yeah. As the country's eyes and ears were glued to 3 explosive testimonies, Corbell whispered something to Charles McCulloch as George Knapp listened with a smirk. McCulloch, who was President Barack Obama's former intelligence community inspector general, represented Grush in his intelligence community inspector general complaint, purposefully seated behind him. Yeah, now, according to the backslappers and the skeptics like Stephen Cambion and Mick West, this guy supposedly has dropped Grush as a client because he's not credible. Well, he was like coaching him at this hearing. I told you. In fact, this is something I covered with Steve actually, because I asked this question about it because I didn't know at the time. Wasn't actually sure what was going on. I wanted to know what Steve thought. These three men sat directly behind David Grush, who was flanked by Navy pilots Ryan Graves and David Fravor during Wednesday's congressional hearing about UFOs. I don't know what the F is doing at the end there. Grush's testimonies about recovered biologics of non-humans from alleged UFO crash sites made national and even international headlines, while details in Knapp's and Corbell's letters went under the radar. Oh, right, I see. That's what went under the radar. Yes, indeed, the testimony actually did get international headlines. It's about bloody time, too, and better headlines than the Daily fucking Star. Don't get me started on that again. All right. But I know that the letters went under the radar, but they were, they're still available and people can learn about them and things like that. I don't think under the radar is possibly the right word. Knapp has been reported on UFOs, now referred to as unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, since 1987, as they had a direct relationship with Senator Harry Reid. And Corbell has been a go-to source for UFO whistleblowers and been acknowledged as essential in organising with the witnesses for Wednesday's historic bipartisan hearing. Knapp said he heard first whispers about crashed UFOs, strange material and reverse engineering programs being carried out in the Nevada desert by intelligence and defense contractors in 1989. That was from Bob Lazar. That's what sparked his relationship with then freshman Senator Reid. And here is the statement to Congress, which I won't read. He revealed Russia's 10-year studies about UFOs, which he wrote was the largest UFO investigation ever undertaken. That's correct. Timothy Good mentions it. It was over 60,000 personnel were involved. It included thousands of case files and interviews with military personnel. Right. Don't know if it's necessary to read the rest of this. Anyway, it's just, I thought it goes on this, if I remember right, it goes on a bit further here. You can read the rest of it anyway. It's there's the URL. But that's just a sense of what the media are saying. And now I want to come on to the good old big black cock. UFOs and aliens bring a divided US Congress together. Oh, here we go. This is by Kayla Epstein, no relation to Jeffrey, I hope. If the truth is out there, the US Congress wants to know. When's the word racist and fascist going to come in, I wonder? The House of Representatives convened a landmark panel on unidentified anomalous phenomena, more colloquially known more colloquially as UFOs, on Wednesday, in the most serious acknowledgement of that mysterious sightings deserve scrutiny at the highest levels of government. U.S. lawmakers, white males. Well, they weren't all white males. Actually, they weren't all white and they weren't all male. In fact, one of the best ones was Mrs. Luna, who's female, very female, in fact. Were not bringing little green men or flying saucers into the hearing. We're just going to get to the facts. Republican Tim Burchett said at the beginning of the meeting. Yet the testimony at times strayed into the unknown. Well, strayed into the unknown. What's that supposed to mean? That's all. The testimony at times strayed into the unknown. That's a rather weird statement. Anyway, over the course of 2 hours, it's a bit more than 2 hours actually. 3 witnesses shared their encounters with objects that defied physics and told of pilots afraid to speak up, biological material recovered from crafts, the alleged retaliation against whistleblowers. All acknowledged that anomalous phenomena were a potential national security threat. The hearing produced no serious bombshells, nor confirmation of alien life. Well, it depends how you define it. As I said, I think that it's funny enough, we got a picture down here of Freddie Mercury, right? That's very appropriate because I was actually thinking this today. Right. This is Freddie Mercury's auction. It's not related, but I was just thinking about that song by Queen. I want it all. I want it all. I want it all. And I want it now. That is kind of the attitude of the backslappers and the skeptics. They want it all. They want miracles. They want a dead alien body dumped on the table. They want massive boxfuls of documents turned upside down on the floor where all those newsmen are sitting so that they can all see it. They want it all and they want it now. As Cambion said in his latest show, this is shut up or put up time. Well, that's not how it works, as Steve will explain. No confirmation, yeah, but the fact that the witnesses received major hearings before Congress was notable in and of itself. Precisely. Lawmakers and witnesses alike used the panel to demand greater transparency around UFOs from the military. Oh, this is who was wearing this? I still want to believe. Was that really? No, that's a Getty Images. It's a library shot. It's better than the usual sort of picture of E.T. the extraterrestrial from Hollywood, I thought. Retired U.S. Navy Commander David Fravor once again recounted his encounter. That rhymes almost. With a tic-tac-shaped UFO in 2004 that moved in a way that baffled aviators. The footage of which was released in 2017 and publicly verified by the U.S. Navy 2 years later. Yeah, I remember all the skeptics, and indeed, it's a sensible question. Greenwald was asking it. Are you sure this isn't just like animation? David Grush, an ex-Air Force intelligence officer, hinted at the government officials that suppressed information and punished whistleblowers, but claimed he could not elaborate further in the public due to classification laws. In one notable exchange, Nancy Mace, she was very good actually, Mrs. Mace, yeah, a South Carolina Republican, and she's white, asked Mr. Grush to elaborate. I think it's to elaborate. Asked Mr. Grush to elaborate on what he knew about non-terrestrial bodies. She asked him if biologics were recovered from any craft retrieved by the government. Referencing his previous media interviews, Mr. Grush responded that biologics came with some of these recoveries. Were they human or non-human? Mrs. Mace asked. Non-human, he said. Now that's you see, I know a lot of people on Cambion's been saying this, that basically, it's no big deal saying these things in front of Congress. I know he swore an oath, but it's no one gets prosecuted for lying to Congress. Nobody. Well, I'm not sure. Would you be willing to take the risk, especially if you had your career to consider as well? By the way, the people who are saying that Grush is a vulnerable adult, okay, and he's been taken advantage of. David Grush is he is autistic, but he's very high functioning, or he wouldn't have served in the military and intelligence services. So he's not a vulnerable adult, clearly. Anyway, what else is here? I think this looks like just a kind of summary. I'm going to skip all this now. I did read this earlier. It looks like just a summary of what we've seen before. So probably no point reading any more of it. So I did have a quick look through that article earlier, and it sounds to me like very unusually for the BBC. They're not. That's far more sober and factual than what you normally get from the corporation. Normally you get more rhetoric. You get some reference to racism or sexism or something like that. You didn't in this case, which is interesting. I mean, the funny thing is there was no you won't often get some kind of nasty snide remark about why it's not true and it's all a load of nonsense. They didn't do it this time, and that's very interesting. All right, so let's have a look at everything I've done in my notes, because I'm just going to have a quick look through. Yeah, because I don't want to go for the entire media. There's no point going for the entire media because it's just too much. There's too much to do. There's too much to cover. But anyway, that's it for now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand you over to Monsieur Stephen Bassett and moi. So I hope you enjoy my interview with him.
All right, let's get going, man. I got another interview, believe it or not, at 1.
Right, well, let's indeed. Yes, don't have much time. To begin with, I've got a very appropriate T-shirt here. You can see the little flying saucer, and it says, "Told you so." It disappears sometimes, but it actually says "Told you so." And it's now my new favorite T-shirt.
Have you seen the graphic? Very nice image of Bob Lazar, looking nice. He's standing. He's nicely dressed. And next to it is "I told you so." I think you put that up.
I've seen that, yes.
There's going to be a lot of "I told you so" going on here. I'm going to try not to get too into that too much. But we'll see.
Extremely. I mean, now to begin with, I mean, I watched it. I was actually on my way to the Glastonbury Symposium. I went to a little pub. I got my laptop out. Managed to get on the Wi-Fi, and I watched it live in the pub. Everyone else was watching the football. I was sitting there on my own, watching
It's okay.
group of
All
guys
right.
and suited guys in Washington DC talking. But you know what I mean? People said, "Are you going to be disappointed? Are you going to? Is this what you expect? Does it exceed your expectations?" Steve, what happened last week is one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen. It totally exceeded my expectations. It was literally the citizen hearing come true 10 years later.
It was good, but to really appreciate it, you have to know the issue.
Yeah.
By the way, are we on? Are we recording?
Yes, we are recording.
Okay.
It's
In order to
not live.
appreciate, you have to know the issue. If you know the issue, then you realize the power of many of these answers and what they were doing. The average person, it was like, okay, they brought some stuff up and looks like they're serious and what have you. Didn't have a large audience. It was put together in a short amount of time. The next one, though, is going to have a big audience, and I think the guys in the pub may very well be tuning into that.
I hope they put it on the big screen on the wall.
I think they will. It just requires a certain amount of pre-promotion. This was the first hearing since 68, 55 years. Hearing now with witnesses under oath. The others are briefings that were held on the Hill. No big deal. They don't count. Was put together quickly by the Republicans, who were getting a little irritated that the Senate was hoarding this issue and wanted to exert their influence. Tim Burchett, rather, is how it's pronounced. I think was the leader here. He convinced Comer, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, that we need to do a hearing. And they had a subcommittee, frankly, that was not inappropriate. And so they threw it together. Tim was and Anna Paulina Luna were given the task to try to get it together. They didn't have a lot of time. They were able to get 3 witnesses, and it was announced, but not the kind of promo and not the kind of anticipation or involvement that would generate a massive hearing. But it was a perfect opening act for the Senate's hearing, which absolutely must take place in September. I will spend all of August telling them that. And hopefully they'll listen.
I know, being politicians, they can vote themselves a very long paid holiday. I wish I could do that. And as a result, they're taking all of this month off. I mean, I'm very glad they actually managed to get this House hearing in before the end of that, because otherwise we'd have had to wait until September for the whole thing even to start.
That's right. That's true. That's true. They deliberately scheduled it for 2 days before the end of the congressional session. But when our politicians go home for recess, they're not on vacation. They're back in their districts, and they use this time to deal with their constituents. They do represent states and districts, and so they're working. But my congressman, as it happens, is one of, I think, the finest human beings in all of our Congress. His name is Jamie Raskin. And so when he went home for recess, he took the Metro. So I'm hoping to be able to spend a little time with Congressman Raskin in August to discuss this issue, because he was at the Oversight Subcommittee hearing. He is on that subcommittee.
And wait on the platform till he comes out and then say, "Hey, mate, how you doing?" That sort of thing.
Yeah. So
mind if I sit beside you?
So yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So what would my friends in the UK like to know?
Well, I suppose I can only give you my own questions, my own opinions, because this sort of like raised more questions. It answered a few. One was, is David Grush going to testify? With other witnesses? And the answer was yes. If he hadn't been there, I wouldn't have really taken so much of an interest in it. And what I really did think, what I thought would happen is once he's held up, he's under oath, he's sworn by Almighty God to tell the truth. I thought he'd tone it down a bit. I thought all the witnesses, they would probably not say the same things they said to Tucker Carlson or to Ross Coulthart, but they didn't. They actually repeated the very same testimony they repeated to the media. Sure. And knowing full well that if they are making it up now, they face a possible perjury prosecution, which is a very serious matter. So yeah.
They're not making anything up.
No,
They weren't
they're
making
making
anything up
exactly.
initially, and they're not making it up now.
Exactly.
So
No one can
uh,
pretend that anymore. See, everyone thought they're just spitting cool time, Tucker Carlson or yarn. They're not. The other I suppose more questions is: are there other witnesses? Is there more evidence? What has been going on in the skiffs? Because Coulthard has said, "Oh, I know these people who've been talking in the skiffs about," and I can't name them. But they have like decisive forensic evidence, for example, things like
uh,
that.
your audience needs to understand that all the way back to 2019. I'm picking a time. It could have been before, a little later, but let's just say mid 2019 and forward. There have been briefings going on to members of Congress continuously, and these also included some classified reports from the Department of Defense that were requested under legislation. They've interviewed some witnesses, and so the brains of a lot of members of our Congress are being filled up with very significant information about this phenomena, including information that only the government has, not the citizen science researchers and journalists like you and me. And some of this information, wrongly or rightly, is spreading across the Capitol Hill, which is really a giant cafeteria. If you've ever been if you've ever been up on Capitol Hill, it's a giant cafeteria. You got a big cafeteria in the Capitol. You've got a couple in the tunnels underneath the Senate office buildings and underneath the House office buildings, and the staff. And there's thousands of staff. They're down there having lunch at the subway and eating soft serve ice cream and spreading the scuttlebutt. Right. In general, I don't think they're breaking laws, but I'm sure there's some things that they pass on which probably they shouldn't. And so whatever's going on Capitol Hill gets around. And so finally, after all these decades, Capitol Hill, I assure you, was on a very steep learning curve. And pretty soon might approach knowing 8, 9, 10% of what Richard Dolan carries around in his brain all the time. And that's a lot. And so all of this simply states that the United States government is very well prepared to end this truth embargo. It needs to be done in an appropriate way, which means it needs to follow hearings. In other words, Richard Nixon was never going to leave the White House simply because some Congress people got irritated and told him you ought to go. There had to be extensive, what we call the Watergate hearings, with millions and millions of people watching it, with people under oath testifying, and that established a proper situation, a proper platform for this to happen. Something of that magnitude, a president stepping down, the public wants to know why. It wants to see the process, and so they did that. They could have just gone up on the Hill and threatened them and said, if you don't leave, we're not going to let you have a library or something. But no, same thing here. For the president to confirm that we are not alone, which I know the president knows that we are not alone. In fact, every president has known that to one degree or another. For the president to confirm that formally, there needs to be a process that is public and appropriate. And that process is first the education of the Congress, followed by hearings, and then followed by a response from the White House. And the longer it drags out, the more awkward it is, because as you move forward, the president doesn't want to be trying to answer questions about this until the public has seen some testimony. And so this thing is dragging out too long. But I get that. Look at the things that are happening in the world. The political situation is still chaotic, and there's still a war in Europe where you weekly you hear some idiot talking about, well, we're going to probably have to use nukes.
Oh, God.
And so it's dragging it out. But so far, they're maneuvering fairly well, behaving pretty well. But a major hearing of multiple witnesses of the most powerful type, in other words, 10 Grushes, and they're out there testifying before the Senate Intel under oath, will be enough for the president to confirm. All of this should happen in September. and we will be in the post-disclosure world. And Sunak will almost certainly confirm exactly what the president says, probably within 24 hours.
Yeah, that's it. And it's going to, of course, that, as we've explained before, that a lot more will follow that. But you will have like the admission from the state. Yes, we're not alone, and we have proof of that. We have proof that we're not alone. That, I think, is going to be the that's going to be the moment. That's going to be the moment when they can't pretend anymore. I mean, there's going to be more questions. For example, the reason I've got this picture behind me, Sean Kirkpatrick has stated that he's annoyed by what happened because he said Arrow wasn't basically consulted. The witnesses that were supposedly with Arrow weren't. Well, this guy behind me learned that in the 50s and 60s, J. Allen Hynek, when he was chief scientist of Project Blue Book. He learned that there's always going to be, like, there has been an official investigation which has deliberately not been investigating. The TV series Project Blue Book illustrates it very well, actually. It's not there to investigate. It's there to look like it's investigating when it's not. And what Dr. Kirkpatrick's learned is that something's, there's this undercurrent going on behind the scenes. And I think he suddenly realized that the way Hynek realized this, and that's what radicalized him. So
no, it's not the same.
No? Okay.
I get the analogy. It's a reasonable analogy, but it's not the same situation. That was a long time ago. No, here is what's going on now. I may have said this on a previous interview with you, but if I have, no problem, because I'm going to keep repeating it right up until disclosure.
Of course.
Everything that you see happening here in the United States, the legislation being passed repeatedly in these National Defense Appropriation Acts, setting up a structure, setting up a Vero, calling for reports, calling for this, calling for that, and even this hearing that was just held. All of this is not at all about the United States government realizing that, my goodness, there's something here we need to understand, and we're going to investigate it and find out what it is. It has nothing to do with that. Zero to do with that. The United States government is fully aware of this phenomena, knows what this phenomena is, has had crash vehicles, and has been doing reverse engineering for 70 years. It has massive amounts of evidence. So that is not what this is about. What this is about is what I said earlier. In order to get to a place where the president can end this truth embargo, which is not just some recent thing that needs to be corrected, but a 77-year disinformation propaganda campaign in service of national security and legal, there needs to be an appropriate ramp up to that for a number of reasons, but not only so the public can participate and see some transparency, but to show the proper deference to the issue, to show the deference to the public's right to know. So when the president does announce, people are going to be as understanding as possible when probably in the next week following the announcement, some journalist who myself and many others have been pumping with information for decades, who are not stupid, they're going to be over at the Department of Defense briefing room. They may be over at the White House briefing room, wherever. They're going to ask a simple question. Excuse me, madam, sir. When did the United States government first know that this phenomena was not human? And the answer is not 2022 or 21. The answer will be 1947 and possibly earlier.
Yeah.
Think about that now. 1947.
Certainly earlier in my view, yeah.
So what's the next question? The next question is, why didn't you tell us sooner? The answer, national security. Next question. Excuse me. Well, with respect to this non-human technology that now has been confirmed, when did we have non-human technology? 1947. Well, why didn't we learn this sooner? National security. And the questions will continue like that. And a lot of people are going to be kind of, okay, well then why did you act for the last years like you're just dealing with this, or you just realized it. But why this charade? Why this whole game? The answer will be because this is what we should have done in 1948, very possibly in 53. I think that President Kennedy was considering maybe doing in a second term in office. Could have been done after the Cold War ended during the Clinton administration, but we were not able to do it. National security situation, the world situation simply did not permit it. But so we did it now to show you that we take this seriously and to allow you to participate in this extraordinary revelation, as opposed to just suddenly coming one day and saying, yeah, they've always been here. We didn't tell you, tough, walk it off and then move on. No. And that's the answer. And because they have gone through these processes, because they have allowed the media and the public in, the public is going to be generous and say, okay, that's what's going on. All right. Now, in that context, Ben, it's not simple and it's not perfectly scripted. This is a very complex process in which there's a number of people playing chess, and there's a move here and a move there, and it's moving in the right direction, but it's not like some crisp script of a movie production. And so Kirkpatrick is in a very difficult place. He is the person that was made head of Arrow. Arrow is the entity that is supposedly the interface to the issue and is going to help us discover what it is. This is an awful position for him to be in, all right? Yeah. Because he can't tell us what it is, and he's not going to tell us what it is, but he is in that position. And so far, that has been okay. However, Grush's coming forward was a black swan event. It was not expected. But, I mean, they had hoped something like that wouldn't happen, but there was a number of people that could have come forward, but he came forward. And he came forward for reasons as a whistleblower, the only one that I'm aware of that is formally a whistleblower. And he dropped a bomb right into the punch bowl and said, look, we've got ET technology, we've got bodies. That put the whole, what I would call public relations extrication process ahead of its skis and put Sean Kirkpatrick in a very difficult spot. He'd already stated to Gillibrand in a briefing that the Arrow has not encountered any information that shows that it's non-human. And so he was in a tough spot, and he made a poor choice. He shouldn't have done anything. He should have just kept quiet. Instead, he put out this letter. That is not going to go well, and probably will result in him being replaced at Arrow. I have nothing but sympathy for Sean Kirkpatrick, but that is why that letter was written.
I see, right. Well, on the subject, firstly, on the subject of the answers about non-human technology, in other words, what some people call alien reproduction technology, which I deal with this very much in my book, Roswell Rising, a Novel of Disclosure, which I really recommend. It's only £10 from
nice
all
plug
good
there,
bookshops.
sir. Very nicely done. Nice segue. Excellent.
That's the
modest, not too much. Excellent.
Exactly. Good. I wanted to find a way to slip that in.
Buy book. Okay.
Yeah, nope. Exactly. But you know, oh, Steve's frozen. Can you hear me all right, Steve?
Hang on. My camera's adjusting.
No
I bumped the camera. The camera's very sensitive. It's a very delicate camera, but it'll be back on in a second. I'm
sorry, camera. We don't want to hurt your feelings.
Yes. Hang on. Got to go back in here and turn it back on. It can get a little bit twitchy. A little twitchy. Come on. Here we go.
Sean Kirkpatrick, I think, he's not going to be the only one in a difficult situation. As I said, on the subject of alien reproduction technology, I suppose what a lot of people are going to ask, and this is going to be one of my questions, and indeed in the book, that's what people ask.
Yeah,
is there's a lot of talk about, for example, you know, we all know about wars for oil, we know about pollution, we know about environmental destruction and things like that. And also poverty. Some people are dying because they can't get enough water, and they can't grow food and things like that, and for various other reasons. Or they're like refugees from wars for oil. And the question's then going to be then, well, if you told us this kind of reproduction technology could have enormous benefits for society at large, and maybe that's an understatement. It could transform the world. And so we wouldn't need to use this kind of the destructive kind of technology and the kind of fuel sources we use right now. Do you want me to call you back, Steve, if it helps with the camera?
No, I'll get this. Hang on, just give me a second. Give me a
Okay.
second. I'm going to do this.
You look like right now, it's like you've dropped a
I'm gonna
glass
go back to my
of icy
orbit
water into your lap in your
Yeah,
still.
okay. I sometimes I may have to. What I may have to do here is just a second. Yeah, may have to just take it out and put it back in. We're it's going to do its thing here. Come on.
Okay.
Come on, you little sucker. I need to get a better camera. I will, for sure.
That's the kind of. I suppose no one really wants to be past that buck, though, Steve, do they? I mean, I wouldn't in their shoes.
Well, you've just described. Now the camera's acting weird. That's not a good one. Hang on. Okay. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, you've just described more of the public relations problems that they face. I mean, that's more questions. Another question will come out. Now, this may take a week or two, but a fairly sharp journalist is going to ask this question of maybe the spokesperson for the Pentagon. Have we learned things from ET technology that would be very significant in terms of applications, real world applications?
Exactly. Yeah.
You have suppressed because it was classified and the truth embargo would be jeopardized? The answer will probably be yes. In fact, the answer is well, maybe this way. After disclosure, there's only two things that answers they better have. Anything else, they're going to have serious trouble. There's only two kinds of answers. One, absolute truth, or we cannot discuss that at this point in a public setting, but we hope to in the future. But we are advising members of Congress and so forth who have the clearance of this information. That's the only two answers people are going to accept. If they get some blown off by, well, this is not something you need to know now, or they actually try to lie, the internet's going to carve them up. All right, yeah. Like a Beniana shrimp. So the answer is going to be yes, and people are going to say, well, really? Right. In other words, you realize how much trouble we have here. You realize what we're facing, and the answer is going to be again national security. The policy was based on national security, and these technologies hopefully will soon be available. We're going to try to integrate those into our society, but yeah, there's no easy answer there, and people are going to have to decide how angry they're going to be. My answer is, look, let's just move forward.
That's good. That would be what I would say. I mean, people will react to this in different ways. I mean, there's some people will probably be pretty much indifferent. Others will be furious. They'll. I mean, this is in AD After Disclosure by Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel. They describe some kind of truth and reconciliation process, and kind of the steps have already been taken with the NAA, the Gillibrand Amendment, in a sense that at least exonerates people from security oaths and things like that.
Not exactly. Not exactly. That's not what it does. What the Gillibrand legislation was doing was saying that witnesses who receive, how would you say, problems, witnesses that are in any way.
Oh, Steve, you've gone quiet, mate. You've gone quiet.
I'm sorry?
You've gone quiet.
I have. Oh, I'm sorry. My mic fell off.
Okay.
It's just one thing after another, isn't it?
Okay.
Hang on. Sorry.
We need help from the aliens, guys.
We're it's a citizen. We're citizen journalists.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We can win.
No, the amendment, the legislation that was passed by Gillibrand had section in it. No. This wasn't Gillibrand's amendment. This was Warner's amendment. This is Warner's language in the third bill. Said that. Well, let me think now. Yeah. Well, actually, both bills touched on it. Witnesses who are trying to bring information forward within the channels, the appropriate channels within government, such as pilots reporting sightings or individuals that are asked to speak to members of Congress who have clearance that receive any kind of harassment or problems back at their workplace. This is not acceptable, and that they will answer. They will have to answer to the Senate Intel Committee. We're saying we can't do that. They didn't provide any specific punishments. That would have been too much. But they let the people that need to know that we don't expect to put up. We're not going to put up with that. Now, as it happens, in Warner's language, in the third bill, this would be the 2023 NDAA, and this is how things work here. He put another paragraph in that same bill, which was up on the Senate website for a good while, pending the final reconciliation process with our House of Representatives that produces the final bill that's signed by the president. But in the meantime, the two versions, House and Senate, will be up on the respective websites. And that paragraph sat there for a while. And that paragraph said that should an individual within government be significantly threatened and or harmed or disrupted because of their involvement in trying to bring information forward, that person, by this legislation, has the right to sue that individual and even sue the government itself. This was, to say the least, very, very interesting. And no, that language did not make it into the final bill. I'm not surprised at that. But it was up on the Senate site. Why? Because it was a message from Warner to everybody out there. Whether or not this language makes it into the bill, and most of you probably know it won't, we're serious here. The game playing is over. The embargo is basically coming to an end. Either get on board or get lost. Yeah. And so that's the kind of thing that was going on. Not whistleblower protection, but support for witnesses for internal processes. Not support for somebody that violates their classification and non-DAs and head straight to the New York Times. If they do that, they're going to probably be a whistleblower. They're going to have to take whistleblower status, and that they would then be protected not under the disclosure legislation that's being passed, but by the whistleblower acts that are already in existence. Mm-hmm. These are distinctions with a difference, so I need to clarify.
Yeah, sure. That's thanks, Steve. Thanks for clearing that up. Now, on the subject of David Grush, when he came forward with his information, he was very careful to go through all the correct channels. The Inspector General's, the Defense Office of Pre-Publication Review, things like that. And so is the word whistleblower appropriate for him? Because It sounds to me like he has a lot of official sanction.
He's the only witness that I'm aware of right now that is appropriately a whistleblower for a number of reasons. One, he says he's a whistleblower. That's important. Two, he believes that the policy, and has stated publicly, that the policy that is running the truth embargo is illegal under whatever basis he feels. It could be just basic constitutional or whatever. And he has clearly stepped outside of his clearances. When you go to the New York Times or the Washington Post, or you get an article in the debrief, and you go on News Nation, that's not standard. So he is a whistleblower. No. He's the only one at this point, and that's what. And I caution people: don't just because someone's a witness and they're presenting information doesn't make them whistleblower. Don't call them that. Whistleblower is not something you want to be. Period. The press likes it. It gets more eyeballs. It gets more news, and that's great for the press. It's not good for the witness.
Well, it can get you trapped in a double room.
Whistleblowers go to jail. Ask
Julian
Reality
Assange,
Winner.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
He can get you trapped in a double room for 10 years like Julian Assange.
Well, yeah, he's not a whistleblower. That's different. But Reality Winner is an example of somebody who was a whistleblower, and she went to prison.
Yeah.
So you don't. So now, is Grush going to go to prison? No, he's not, because let's just say that he probably calculated the circumstances of the situation and what is going on and what he's talking about. And unlike what Reality Winner came forward with, and I'm not criticizing her at all, I'm just simply stating that did not have the context or was of a type that she would have great support. And Grush is going to have tremendous support. So I will be shocked if anybody actually formally tries to take action against David Grush. If they do, then they are really stupid. So he is, but again, not everybody who in this issue should think, oh boy, I'm going to be a whistleblower and come running out. I think you really need to think about it very carefully, because the process is moving forward. There are plenty of witnesses ready to testify under oath who have no risk at all in terms of their career, their status, their clearances. And so I don't think anybody at this point needs to throw themselves on the bonfire to make a point. We're winning. So just if you've got information, provide it within the proper channels. They are now ready to hear it.
So presumably, Dops, the inspector generals and people like that, when they knew Grush was going to approach the media, talk to a journalist and people like that, and then tell his story, they could have stopped him if they'd wanted to. They could have reported him. They could have said to him, no, you can't talk about that for obvious reasons, and shut him down. But they didn't.
They could have tried. They certainly could have tried. But in this particular case, I don't think they could have done it. And the reason is that first, Grush spent at least a year and a half trying to handle this internally. He spoke to committees of Congress that had appropriate clearance. When he had to deal with the harassment, he went to the Inspector General's offices. Ultimately, he got relief from the Intelligence Community Inspector General, the ICIG. When his representation before that Inspector General's office was none other than the previous Inspector General who had that job before, Charles McCullough. So that's, you can't have a more powerful or appropriate representation than that. And so the idea that now somebody's going to double back on all this and say, well, he needs to be punished, that would be an incredibly stupid thing. So it's not going to happen. But not everybody who might make a bold move here will have that kind of preface. And so I invite people to think clearly before they go whistleblower. We don't need them now. We need witnesses. There's plenty of them. If you've got important testimony, go to the appropriate entity, whether that's ARROW, whether that's the Senate Intel Committee, whether it's within your actual offices, whatever. There's people ready to hear it. But Grush is a special case, and he did what he had to do, and it's going to work out okay for him.
Yeah, and I mean, is it true that his solicitor actually quit the law firm and is actually acting for him freelance right now?
No. What happened is that once he went public, he made some very strong statements, and so and it's, when I say Rose Law Firm, that's not the law firm that was dealing with the Clintons way back. This is not a different Rose Law Firm. I forget the first name, but the law firm that McCullough works for separated. In other words, they had done their job. They had represented him and gotten relief from the Inspector General's office. But now he goes public, and he's making some very strong statements public. And they felt that at that point, representing them further was not appropriate, and so they stepped away. I do not, but I could be wrong. I don't think McCullough left that law firm. The law firm basically just dropped Grush as a client. Now, if McCullough has left the law firm, to represent him personally, that would be a very significant thing. I don't think that's the case, but if I'm wrong, I'm sure I'll be corrected pretty quickly.
I can't remember. I heard that it might have been Ross Coulthart. I can't remember, but obviously he'll have had his case handed on to another solicitor. I'm guessing he must have some kind of lawyer.
If he needs one, I don't know if he needs a lawyer anymore. I mean, he may need, if he's still getting threats, he needs the Department of Justice. But I don't know if he needs a lawyer. I don't believe that Arrow or the government is going to take any measures against David Grush at this point. So hopefully he does not. What he needs is to not have to put up with any more threats. And of course, once you're a public figure, anybody can threaten you, and
yes,
they will. Now, but there's a difference between stupid stuff on the internet and threats on Twitter or whatever, than threats coming in from anonymous sources in other ways that could be much more serious. So I don't know what his status is. He is American hero. He will be seen as such.
Yes.
But he is now a public figure, and therefore it's still going to be a tough road for him.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he deleted all his social media accounts when he came forward. Well, I don't know exactly why that was, but I suspect it is because maybe Coulthart advised him to, because Coulthart knows very well that these can be used essentially as a stick to beat you with, and very easy, almost like an open front door for everyone from like petty little harassers to serious people who mean business.
Yeah.
Sending you threats, and so I'm guessing that's why I've experienced this myself. I'm sure you have, and this is why he did that. That's just what I'm suspecting. And I mean, that brings us on to, you mentioned threats and things like that. Grush actually mentioned this. He was asked outright by Burchett, about the threats he'd received, including, and he said, yes, people I know have been threatened. I've been harmed. I've been in fear of my life. He wouldn't discuss actual wet work, even though Burchett said murder. He used the M word, murder. But the reason I bring this up is because in a recent interview, Richard Dolan stated there was a factional war going on within the state and the military-industrial complex, and there were many people who want the truth embargo to continue, and they're currently fighting back. What's your position on that?
I wouldn't use the word war, but there is, not surprisingly, there are people within government that still prefer that this embargo continue, and I'm sure they've made their opinions known. And I think there was some efforts to maybe throw some sand into the gears. Certainly early on, I think there was pushback against Luis Elizondo because he was so public and somewhat aggressive. And Lou had to go, like Grush, to the an inspector general. In this case, it was the DOD inspector general. So this is not surprising. No one should be shocked by that. All I can say is that the opposition to disclosure, whatever it is losing. I don't want to gloat, but they're losing. But they have a right to, as long as they don't break the law, they have a right to express their concerns and even stonewall a little bit. Unless if they're not breaking the law and they don't want to participate or they don't want to help out, that's okay. But they're not going to win. This truth embargo is about done.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I've never, literally, the way things are going, it's definitely heading in the right direction, as you said. I suppose now the national security state is, if it's cornered, it will act. It could act in a violent ways. I mean, the CIA, for example, has even South American presidents have not been above its reach, and indeed there have been killings, large numbers of killings as a result of its machinations. Are you concerned about what they might do in the cornered rat situation?
No. Well, first of all, again, I'm not going to. I don't want to ascribe to this terminology. The CIA is not a cornered rat on this issue. Also, there were statements about harm and and so forth with respect to this subject. These are some of the questions that were asked. Most of those questions were deliberately scripted in advance to do certain things and create certain effects, and they were well done. I got to give Anna Paulina Luna and Tim Burchett kudos. They did a very good job in a short amount of time, and as a result, they got answers to a lot of questions, and they also asked questions that couldn't be answered, but they asked them knowing that, of course, the response is going to be, I can only discuss that in a private setting. And I think most people understand what that means. In other words, if I'm sitting there and somebody asks me, Mr. Bassett, are you aware of extraterrestrials engaging the United States government? And my answer is, I cannot speak to that in a public setting, but I'll be happy to discuss that with you in a private setting. That means the answer is yes. And there was a lot of yeses like that. And that was deliberate. They asked him questions that they knew he could not answer and that he would have to refer to being able to speak in private session. It's okay. It's okay.
I got the feeling they've been discussing this privately before. It had that feel to it, actually. Yeah.
Sure. So with respect to the questions about harm, that by and large is in the past. In other words, harm that may have taken place related to the ET presence is, I think, referring back many, many years in the early days, not recently. So that is the first point. Second point is in terms of agencies like the CIA. The CIA has done bad things. Our government has done bad things, and that needs to be reformed. We need a complete overhaul and reforming of the entire military intelligence complex, without question. Maybe post-disclosure that will become doable. But the truth embargo is not going to somehow expose all of that. It's not as if the confirmation of the ET presence immediately leads to the CIA having to come forward and confess to every single violation of law it ever did. Now, it's not cornered. Nobody's cornered, but they need to cooperate, and they are. One of the Magnificent 10 that came forward in 2017 was a career CIA officer, and there were two career CIA people in that Magnificent 10, Khan and Semivan. So these agencies just need to cooperate, and let's get the truth out on the ET presence. Now, once we have the confirmation, once we're in the post-disclosure world, I think we are going to be we're going to have a consensus level we've probably never really seen before in our lifetime or ever, amongst billions of people that can be mined for serious reform. Meaning, look, abuse of secrecy and the vast amounts of money we're spending on it because of global paranoia, never ending, needs to be looked at and reformed. We simply can't continue like this. And certainly we need to minimize illegal actions on the part of agencies and justifying all of these with national security. So all of these potential reforms might be put into play. I'm looking forward to helping with that. I'm looking forward to being a public advocate for that. And let's hope that it happens. But
yes,
again, yeah, we're winning, and no agency is under threat because of the truth embargo.
Good. Now it's actually now it's 10 to 5 for my time, and I know you've got another appointment in about 10 minutes time.
No. I'm good for another hour.
Oh, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. I thought it should. Oh, yeah, 11. It's midday where you are. Yeah, no worries. But I just we sort of, I think we covered most of it, Steve. But I was just wondering, what do you think the next step is? Because one thing that Burchett and Luna were doing, since then they've done a lot of media spots about this. It's pretty clear this isn't just going to be forgotten, and these guys are not going to let it be forgotten. And there's a huge amount of now commentary in all over the media. Even the mainstream media have covered this. I mean, the BBC made it its top feature the day after, even though sadly it was the day Sinead O'Connor died. They still made the top feature was still aliens unite the what was the headline? Aliens unite the divided Congress.
Yeah, there's a lot of that's true. It is a nonpartisan. Look, there are hundreds of articles being written. I cannot log them in on my print media archive fast enough. I've got probably 150 I've got to go log in. I mean, the press is all over this. It's going to continue to be all over this, which is fine. That's what we want. There's still far more they can do, far deeper they can go, and hopefully they will. So the coverage is absolutely locked in now, and that's a good thing. Here's what to expect and what I hope for. The press now has a full month to cover this issue, interview people. Hopefully I'll get some of that too. And the Congress, all the members of Congress now have a whole 4 or 5 weeks to decide how they're going to respond to this, because every member of Congress is going to be running for Congress here if they haven't already started. And they need to understand they're going to be asked about this subject, hopefully in the post-disclosure era. In other words, we do not want disclosure still not resolved, or not having disclosure when these campaigns really get underway. Otherwise, it's just going to be crazy. It's going to be ridiculous. You're going to have people not knowing what to do and what's happening and where it's going, having to answer questions about this. It's going to be just disgusting. And so this 5 weeks may serve a very important purpose. It also gives the press plenty of time to gear up for the hearing that's coming, so that we're not talking we're talking thousands of people wanting to get into the public room, which won't happen. We're talking full foreign feeds, meaning the networks and the cable networks will open up their foreign feeds so that the hearing can be viewed worldwide. Get all that set up. So when the next hearing happens, it's the real deal. Now, the House would love to hold the next hearing. I don't think that's not going to happen. If it does, I'll be stunned. Mark Warner is the man on the spot here. He absolutely needs to pin a date for the Senate Intel Committee hearings. If he tries to delay this, it's going to go very badly for him, and it's going to get much more confusing. And so all he has to do, and he should do it during the recess, is set a date in September for the Senate Intel hearings. And there won't be 3 witnesses. They could easily put 15 witnesses. Now, not in one day. These are hearings that should go on for days, because there's just too many witnesses that need to be done. I think January 6 hearings, right? Where they went boom, 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 boom. And then, of course, the Benghazi hearings went on for months. I'm thinking a minimum of a week, 5 days, 3 to 4 witnesses a day. He needs to announce the beginning of that so that everybody can prepare. If he does, and it's for early September, then the Intel Committee will absolutely be the next hearing. And that hearing should have an audience in the many, many tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. And that is the kind of power, that is the kind of event that is going to be required for the president to comfortably come forward and say, I have watched these hearings, my top advisors have watched these hearings, we have listened to this testimony, and we are convinced, as I'm sure almost all of you are, American people, that we in fact do have non-humans engaging us, and we have non-human technology. And obviously you want to know more about this, and I'm going to see to it that you learn more about this. Boom, that's disclosure. That is what's supposed to happen in September. I hope Mark Warner has the same intention.
Yep, and you know what? I think there's a very good chance of that actually happening. And I'll tell you what, this is quite encouraging, Steve. The potential is, as you talk about in terms of viewers, is there, because if you go to the GOP Oversight YouTube channel, their videos get between, on average, I've checked the viewing figures, they get between, on average, 5,000 to 10,000 views per video. The one about the UAP hearing has so far accrued 1.1 million. It is by far the most popular video. It's by a long way the most popular video on the GOP Oversight channel.
But it should be 50, 80 million.
Well, that figure doesn't include live streams on other channels, and all the major news outlets were live streaming it.
No, but just that one should have that much. And the only reason it didn't is that this was thrown together at the last minute, possibly related to Grush's coming out on July 5. It wasn't enough time to promote it. That's all right. The networks did not jump in. the Senate hearing, unless the networks have gone completely brain dead, every single cable and television network should have a camera in that room, or should be attached to a feed coming from that room. Every single one. If they don't, it just means the people running these networks are still living in a cave somewhere, and need to be dragged out of that cave into the real world. Now, I think they'll come around. I think they sort of are coming around, but we are still in a truth embargo. It's 76 years on, and that's a very powerful statement. 76 years of a propaganda state where virtually the entire public has a misrepresentation in their head, and by the entire public, I mean the highest level people, the academics, the journalists, the whole nine yards, have a misunderstanding of reality stuck in their head because the government spent billions of dollars to ensure that they had it wrong, and now they have to come out of that. It's like trying to wake up after sleeping for 20 hours.
It's an entire human lifetime. I mean, it's 4 generations.
It is a full lifetime. Yeah,
it's
lifetime.
Incredible time. Yeah. Oh.
So, yeah, well, but they're going to wake up. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's this is an amazing time to be in this business. It really is amazing time to be alive. And so, Steve, you still have your website? Is that still going?
No. ParadigmResearchGroup.org is still up. Nice. And here's some updates and some news, and then I can let you go. Very shortly, a Paradigm Research Group is going to file to become a nonprofit. Don't ask why I haven't done this sooner. There are reasons, part of which maybe I'm just lazy, but this has to be done, and it's time. It will be set up, and as a nonprofit, it's going to be a think tank. It doesn't really matter, but it was an activist entity, but it's going to be its role is going to be that of a boutique think tank based in the National Press Building. So, and then that will give me the opportunity to go to the public for tax-free donations in order to make Paradigm Research Group more viable and have more of an activities in the post-disclosure world. Okay, good. That's going to happen. All right. There is a media project that is the outcome of almost 2 years in my being in Los Angeles. It's gone through a number of transformations, but it hopefully will drop later this year. It's a modest project, but it is it's the beginning. It is the beginning of more. I am aware that the massive film industry, which unfortunately right now is in the worst strike it's ever had, and that's something now, naturally, of course it is, but the massive film industry, which has feasted off this subject for the last 70-some years, going back to 1951 with over 600 films, is waking up to the fact that, well, now it can start engaging the real subject and bring its resources to bear on the real subject. And they see a lot of dollars to be made, and there are a lot of dollars to be made. So that is happening, and I've tried to play my role. And so you're going to see something dropping with me in that area, but then there's more to come. All right. Also, Danny Sheehan, my colleague and lawyer, is now launching what will be a major think tank. It will be called the New Paradigm Institute. Is already established as a 501c3. He is pulling together a very respectable advisory group, as only Danny Sheehan can, and it's going to be heavy duty. It's going to be officed on the West Coast and the East Coast. I think it will have an office here in the National Press Building, probably one floor from where I'm at, which is great, right? Oh, so cool. Watch for
You'd
that.
Be a good neighbor.
Okay. Meanwhile, there are going to be some new conferences turning up. They're going to be bigger. They're going to be more expensive. And so what? I mean, this is history being made. History of the highest order is happening. And so not surprisingly, major events are being planned. I'll be speaking at one in November. This is the Stairway to the Stars. It is a massive conference that will have a substantial amount of disclosure and UAP representation, as well as a broad spectrum of other interests that we know people have. And it will be held at the Luxor Hotel. 2,000 rooms have been booked to accommodate attendees. And that's just at that hotel. This is going to be a huge conference, November 10 to 12. I will be speaking probably in some panels, whatever. Check it out. Just Google Stairway to the Stars or Stairway to the Stars or go to the website Disclosure Fest, one word, disclosurefest.org. Then, just about a month later, December 1, 2, 3, I'm going to be speaking in Mexico City at another ufology world conference, which is a group that has been holding conferences around the world, and they're just getting bigger and bigger. How big this one is going to be, I cannot imagine, because Mexico has one of the highest interest levels and awareness levels in their population than any country in the world on UFOs. OVNI, of course, is what they refer to it. Mexico has 25 million people, and Lord knows what's going to happen between now and December. So this conference could be massive. There's some other events. Obviously, you can find them listed on my website under the conferences listing, upcoming conferences. And so that's in the works. Meanwhile, I am directly involved with the Contact in the Desert franchise of conferences. We just had one in June. It's basically the comeback conference after the pandemic and just all the trials and tribulations of a couple of years. It was successful, and it was exciting, and people were very, very pumped up. And then, of course, on the very last day of the conference, which was the intensives on Monday, it was that morning that we watched all together, about 200 of us, Grush's interview with Ross Coulthart on News Nation. This bomb that got dropped into this issue.
That's the perfect place to be,
isn't
it? That's the perfect place to be for it.
Now, the CITD, the Contact in the Desert, is going to probably have 3 times as many people next year at the same place, the Indian Wells Resort in Indian Wells. It's as nice as it gets. Start getting your tickets or at least getting your hotels booked now, folks. It's going to be packed to the max. And so that is coming. There may well be a second Contact in the Desert conference next year, only on a different coast, as that franchise expands. So I'm just trying to give you a sense of just a glimpse of the things that are going to start coming forward very rapidly as the reality of the pending disclosure event starts spreading worldwide. All right. And so then the other thing I would add is if you want to get up to speed on this issue fast, if you want to be smarter than just about everybody in your group at the office or in the family dinners, go to paradigmresearchgroup.org, go to resources, go to print media archive, go punch through to the main archive. It's approaching 15,000 articles.
It's a lot
and just 900 this year and 100 more, where it literally, you can chronologically read all of the coverage and triaged of the higher level professional coverage of what is going on literally in the media, and it's being covered. And you could literally see everything being covered and discussed and become very knowledgeable just on that one site, the print media archive at paradigmresearchgroup.org. And finally, folks, I need Twitter followers. You cannot have too many. At Steve Bassett. Follow me. Need you.
Well, I'm certainly one of those. But thanks for reminding me, Steve, because I'm hopefully going to Stairway to the Stars. I've made plans to go, and I need to get my tickets, and I'm not going to waste any longer for that. And obviously, I'd love to attend some of the other conferences. And also, if anyone from Hollywood is watching, I'm willing to negotiate rights if you want to option Roswell Rising and its sequels. So another shameless plug there. But so that's really good, Steve. And you know what? If you want to go to paradigmresearchgroup.org, there's a link in the show notes and description box. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or Spreaker, it'll be there. And I expect I'll be talking to Steve again, and I'll be seeing him hopefully in November. And we'll be talking to him again because I think there's always news coming up about this particular subject. But Steve, it's always great to talk to you. I want to thank you once again for joining Herpanmo TV and radio. It's really good to talk to you, mate, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, my friend. Let's just try to imagine what it will be like at the Luxor Hotel in the Pyramid with, God knows, probably 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people and disclosure has happened, say in late September, and just try to imagine the energy at that conference.
Yeah.
Just wrap your head about that, and just plan for that, because I have a feeling that's very possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty.
I can imagine. You take care of yourself, my friend. All the best.
Yes, indeed.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Hope the interviews go well. Take care.
Always.
Mm.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, Steve. So that was the one and only Steve Bassett. It's great to have him on the show again. I'm sure we will have lots to talk about in the future. So what's coming next? Well, there's going to be more videos, especially I'm sure lots of you are waiting for this one, my reportage of the Glastonbury Symposium. Yeah, I am editing it. It's getting done. It'll be up within a couple of days. Also, I've got a feeling I'm going to have to come back to this whole issue of UFO disclosure again, I'm afraid. I'm not going to abandon it. I know some of you may think maybe getting fed up with it. And I'm getting a bit of fatigue as well with this, but it's just so important. It needs to be covered. It needs to be covered. There will be more hearings at some point. It was actually quite a relief that they were done just before the recess, the congressional recess, which, as Steve explained, it's not a complete holiday, but it does mean they leave Congress, they go back to their constituencies, and they just deal with their own representative issues there. So there'll be no more congressional work now done until September, but hopefully then there will be more. There will be a few more hearings. We can advance the subject a bit further. If that happens, of course, well, that'd be brilliant, because sooner or later more's going to come out all publicly and things like that. But as Steve explains, the process doesn't just stop for the summer. And indeed, I think it's up to people like me, Steve, all the people like Tim Burchett and all the others who've been speaking out about this, to keep speaking out about it, to keep the iron hot in the fire, so that it can be struck effectively in September. And of course, there are other countries as well, as I've explained. There are other countries. What's going to happen there? What about my own, the United Kingdom? What about my own? What about yours? Who knows what's going on in yours? From what I gather, from what I've heard, Brazil is very, very advanced in all this. Anyway, guys, whatever it is, whatever happens, you will, whatever happens next in this saga, and indeed any other saga, you will hear first live and exclusive on Hapanwo TV. Thank you for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.